Since Strand came out, most people have been doing the same thing. Suspend, suspend, suspend. Some people don't even know what the other grenades on the subclass do. Well, except for when they're doing a jumping puzzle and are about to fall up the map and then they grapple themselves back to safety. But other than that, most people don't even know what those grenades do. Bungie has let this go on for long enough, and recently they announced they're going to be nerfing Suspend to allow the other grenades shine. Don't get me wrong, if you love Suspend for the really difficult content that you do, it's probably still going to be usable, it's just not going to be half as efficient as it used to be. If you're wondering how bad this nerf is going to be, let me just go through it real quick. Right now in the game, you can suspend for 8 seconds, and if you use the fragment, you can extend that to 12 seconds. So most times you see people suspending, it's because they can have 12 seconds to be able to kill the enemy. When this nerf hits, even when you have the fragment on to extend the duration of your suspend, the maximum time you'll be able to suspend for is going to be 7 seconds. So it's still going to be 1 second less than the base suspend that we currently have in the game right now. So if you want to use it, go ahead. Maybe one day it becomes anti-meta and then I make a build for it, but for right now, we're just going to focus on the build that we're working on today. The core of this build is centered around the grapple grenade, the strand melee, and the flechette storm aspect. We will be spamming these abilities to make all the magic happen. The grapple grenade creates a grappling hook that allows you to launch yourself at enemies. While you do this, any melee you do during or shortly after this launch deals area damage and unravels targets. This launch melee also counts as a charge melee for the other mods and fragments we'll be using for this build. For the regular melee on the subclass, this has actually become my favorite melee on the Titan since the shoulder charge melees got nerfed. First off, you can charge up to 3 of these melees and you can use them all back to back. We'll avoid doing that for this build though because we're going to be chaining our melees, but sometimes if you want to have some fun, you could do it. We have a way to get it all back, so don't worry too much about that one. This melee also serves enemies you hit, which means they do 30% less damage to you. So yeah, not only are you hurling yourself at these enemies, you're also going to be insanely tanky in this build at the same time. But we'll discuss that part in a little bit more detail later. Lastly, we have the flechette storm aspect, which allows us to turn our melees into projectiles that we can launch at enemies, which unravel them so it attaches to them and it spawns these nanites that attack and continuously do damage to the enemies. Combining all 3 of these is just insane. So let's talk about how we're gonna get such a high uptime on all our abilities for this build. The exotic for this build is going to be shocking, not because you don't know it, but because you probably used it a lot but never thought of using it for Strand. We'll be using the Heart of Immoslide exotic for this build. If you're a seasoned Destiny 2 player, I'm sure things are already starting to add up in your head. But if you're new to the game, don't worry, I'm going to break it down for you real quick. This exotic was one of the most popular Titan exotics till it got nerfed for spamming arc abilities, but I hope I don't get it nerfed by making this build. Anyway, for Heart of Immoslide, using an ability empowers your other 2 abilities. Empowered means abilities have faster regen, so melees and grenades do more damage and barricades have more hit points. I don't like popping barricades because I love going fast and I don't like to stop, but if that's your jam, enjoy. When we use a grenade to hook an enemy, it empowers our melee. Now we have up to 5 melees that we can use that are all going to be empowered, and using any of those melees also empowers our grenade. I know you see just 3 melees on the screen right now, so you're wondering, what does he mean by 5 melees? Well, count with me. We get 1 for free when we hook onto an enemy. We have 3 more that are startup for our regular charge melees. Also, you might not know this, but the flechette storm has a knockback effect when you activate your melee mid-air. That effect does damage, and this also counts as a charge melee because if you get a kill with it, it also empowers your grenade and makes orbs like other charge melees. Things are getting interesting, right? Let's take a look at the armor that I use. This build isn't just about Spider-Man moves, but we are also going to be really tanky. Like I always say, you can't kill anything if you're dead. I run 20 mobility, 80 resilience, 90 recovery, 100 discipline, 20 intellect, and 50 strength. Us being tanky is not just coming from our resilience alone. We discussed server, which gives us a 30% damage reduction. We're also going to be running Thread of Fury, which gives us woven mail when we pick up an orb of power, which gives us about 70% damage reduction with the 80 resilience that we're running. So we're out here running around taking 100% less damage than everyone else. We're swinging and having fun at the same time. The 90 recurve helps us continuously heal whenever we take damage. 100 discipline cause you want to have a grenade a lot to be able to swing around. I also have 50 strength, which is rare for me because usually I stay away from the strength stat. But for this one, I already had everything else where I wanted it, so I guess it doesn't hurt. You might not be able to replicate this exact stats, so just prioritize the stats that I've chosen the best you can and you should be fine. If you can replicate it exactly though, I'd actually like to see that. Stop by my stream when you can so I could do a build check for you and see if it actually matches. First, we have the aspect into the fray, which gives us and our allies woven mail if we destroy a tangle or cast our super. And while we have woven mail, it increases our melee recharge rate. So all these melees, I told you we're going to be able to get those back really quickly. This aspect has a lot to do with that. I like to use this aspect with the fragment, thread of fury, and thread of generation. Fry states damaging a target with a tangle grants melee energy, while generation states doing damage gives grenade energy. So basically, if I grab a tangle and throw it at some enemies, my melee regeneration is increased, I get some melee and grenade energy back, and I also get woven mail. The synergy on those three things is just crazy. I use Font of Wisdom, hands-on, and heavy-handed as a trifecta for my super energy. Heavy-handed makes orbs on melee kills. This orb gives us armor charge for Font of Wisdom, which gives increased super regeneration, and hands-on gives us more super energy per melee kill. We also run impact induction and grenade kickstart, so our melee hits can give us grenade energy, and whenever we use our grenade we get some of it back. I like to use my grapple grenade whenever I have 2 stacks of armor charge. This way I get about half of it back instantly when I use my grapple, and then once I attack the enemy that I grappled to, I get grenade empowered, which pretty much fills it back up. If I use my grenade before I have my armor charges ready, I use double bomber in my class items so I can use my barricade to recharge my grenade a little, and then I could just use a few melees to get empowered, and that's gonna fill up the grenade. That's how the build works. You use your multiple melees to charge your grenade and you just keep cycling through them. If you notice, I use the flechette melee a lot more than I melee most times, and I do that for 2 reasons. When I'm melee empowered, that knockback does more damage, and it doesn't cost me a full melee charge when I use it, but it still activates the perks that I need. Another tip is if you ever have a target that's doing a lot of damage to you, you can run up to them, do a melee to sever them, or you can grapple towards them and your first melee will add those nanites to them, basically making them unravel, and then your second charge melee is going to sever them, which gives you that 30% damage reduction. For weapons, honestly there are a lot of strand exotics to choose from, but because this is the anti-meta build series, I might as well use something that's a little bit different. But you can use any exotic that you want. We're not really planning on shooting that much with this build anyway. I use the final warning sidearm, which when you hold down the trigger, it marks targets, and when you release at full charge, it unravels targets. This helps do damage to our enemies, which in turn regenerates our grenade. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video and hit that like button if you loved it, and I'll see you on the next one.